Uh, It is 7:02 p.m. on April 3rd, 2024. This is a meeting of the Capital Budget Committee. And our first item for the agenda, Nora, I'm going to just do the meeting minutes first, and then we can
Sure.
get to the report. But the first item is the meeting minutes. Those have been circulated in advance of the meeting. The meeting minutes are for the February 15th, 2024 meeting. And Michael, I don't believe you were present for that, but your input on the minutes is always welcome, especially if you notice anything that typographically incorrect, et cetera, or ways things should be phrased better. So first thing I just want to raise on the meeting minutes, there are a couple of sort of blanks, one of which is with respect to the person who moved and the person who seconded for the Recreation Commission project, the revised tennis and pickleball. And there's another blank for the, I'm just going to call it historical display items or historical items display. It's written here at Sherborn Historical Museum. I don't have a specific memory of which person moved or seconded on those two items. I don't have, I look back at my notes, I don't have anything specific as to who moved or seconded, nor do you have any memory?
My memory was that I probably seconded it as opposed to moved it.
Is that the recreation? I have a feeling that I might have made the motion and you seconded it.
I believe I seconded it.
Okay,
Okay, we can fill that in.
I got that.
On the Sherborn Historical Museum, do you have a memory, Nora, one way or the other?
I probably would have just seconded it and not made the motion.
I don't remember, but I'll be happy to remember that I made the motion.
Look, I don't think it's imperative to have, so I'd rather be accurate, i.e. we don't remember, than sort of guess. But if people think
My
it is
impression
one way,
probably mostly seconded things, but I can't guarantee that. But I did not vote against it, so.
right. So again, if we don't have a recollection of it, I'm fine just
Leaving it out.
Noting, yeah,
Okay.
or noting that
Yeah.
unclear. But
I
either
thought
way,
that meeting was recorded. I believe that one with Sean was recorded, but I could not find it uploaded on the.
so it was a hybrid meeting, but I think, Jeremy, were you working the computer component of that meeting?
The Sean was on Zoom, and then it was me, the whole Corey, Peter, me, Dan, and Jeremy were there in person. And I don't see that was uploaded.
It wasn't uploaded. I recall hearing that there were some audio issues with that meeting. As maybe why it wasn't, but yeah, you're right, Nora. It hasn't been uploaded.
I can check on that. What was the date again of that?
February 15th.
15th. Okay. I'll check in on that. Sorry, Nora.
Yeah. And I also made the change, Peter, from the project that shall not be named to the library project.
Yeah, I thought it was clever, the Harry Potter reference or whatever other cultural touch point. I do appreciate the change to just saying what it is. Yeah.
Wait, can you clarify that for me? Because I was.
So in the notes, if you look at the notes, it says under the Sherborn Historical Museum, the note taker, instead of referring to the library project in the past, which I think Sean had referenced in his statement or discussion. And so it was translated by the note taker into the project that shall not be named. So Corey is proposing the switchback, which I endorse.
The Sherborn Historical,
The sentence said, Colleen also reminded that a lesson learned from the recent project that shall not be named was the absolute necessity of having quality, accurate, and complete plans before sending out RFPs. And it was suggested that I strike recent project that shall not be named and just say library project.
and I would submit to you, I one time mentioned that on an advisory and I inadvertently said library and I was chastised, and I don't mind putting this out there, that it shall not be called the library project, but the Sherborn History Center and Museum project. In the library.
Yeah, so I'm sadly not surprised that someone chastising you, but not because of what you said was wrong, but just because of people's views on that. But nonetheless, Mr. Colleen, who could say something if you wanted to, I see he's here, was referring to the library renovation project. He was not referring to the
Oh,
historical.
all right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
I'm talking to the library over $7 million project.
Correct. That was what was being referenced in the
It was originally
discussion.
proposed as $1 million. Yes, thank you.
All right.
May I make a motion that the minutes be approved with the 3 corrections that are noted?
Second, motion moved. Seconded, seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so let us move on to actually, Nora, do you want to raise an item for discussion?
So, Michael, Mikey, where you just, right before you came on, when I was looking at the draft that Dan sent around, I noticed on the capital budget committee presentation that there was no vote. It was just capital budget approved versus 3-0, 2-1 and whatnot. And I was just curious as to why we didn't have a vote number on that. Personally, I think we should have a number on that so that it wasn't necessarily unanimous on everything. Most of them were unanimous, but I think it is important to share where some, you're not outing, it doesn't, we're not naming the person, but I think it is interesting if somebody voted no.
And so Nora's question was, why was it done that way? And as the drafter of the report this year, I had sort of adopted the format of the report from last year, which said, basically speaking speaking as one voice, the committee is recommending, or to the extent it was not going to recommend, and not breaking down the vote total. And so that's what I did this year in the report that gets sort of folded into the advisory committee report. And, it could be changed. Like I'm not sort of wedded to one way or the other, but I think the rationale again is to sort of speak as one voice in one voice. I think I was the only person in this past year to have voted against any measure. I don't feel it necessary to broadcast my negative vote on stuff, but.
And I wasn't trying to do that, Peter, on your negative vote. I'm just saying it's just interesting. 3-0, or what if somebody didn't show up and was 2-0? I'm just saying it's interesting for the record.
Right. And I guess I was saying that the vote tallies are in the meeting minutes and they're recorded as such in the meeting minutes. So I don't know, anybody else on the committee or Mike, obviously you took votes at different points in time. Do you have any views on how to do the report itself, whether not to put vote tallies or not?
Go ahead.
I guess my 2 cents, I think there is information value in whether the vote was unanimous or there was a split decision, or at least, in this case, one person. But that's why and do like the approach of the advisory that there's some information value, that it wasn't totally unanimous, but I don't feel super strongly about it though either.
Corey, thoughts?
I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other. I'm okay with including the vote.
Okay, there's one logistical hurdle, which I think is our report, I think was due today.
In the
So-
future, I'm just saying in the future, it was just something I noted and I just wanted to understand that.
Okay,
Let's see, and
All right.
Jeremy has his hand raised, not that I'm taking control of the meeting, but
Oh,
Yeah,
Jeremy?
Peter interrupted discussion. Like Deb texted saying she's trying to get in the meeting. Is there a waiting
Oh.
room or
Sorry,
no? It's okay. I'm just not. I'll let her.
I'm being a bad host. I'm not focused on the waiting room. I should be more cognizant.
Oh, no
So
worries. I'll let
I
her.
just-
Oh, there it is.
I just let her in. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Jeremy. Dan has a hand raised.
Hey, just wanted to say the advisory report is I think going to be going to the printer tomorrow sometime. So if you wanted to include votes, if you got that information to me quickly, we could do that. If you'd prefer to just have that be a note for next year, that's fine too, whatever you want to do. But there is still time to get that in if you wanted to do that.
Right. It might be more of a bandwidth issue if it is going to the printer tomorrow morning than anything, frankly.
I'm not feeling that strongly. I just wanted to understand why. And personally, I think it should be, but not necessarily for this year, but just going forward, I think it's important,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay, so I guess I'll leave it open to people if we could just make it official and someone can move on it and we can vote on it. My only concern is more of an issue of timing to get everything buttoned up and double checked. I appreciate when people are checking things to make sure it's actually accurate before it goes to the printer.
How about I'll move that beginning in our fiscal year 26 report, we include the numerical votes on our recommendations.
I second.
All in favor?
I
Aye. All right. Shall be done. Okay, all right. Now, I would like to bring up the proposal, the revised proposal for the stormwater project for fiscal year 25. I'm going to try, for the sense of expediency here, relay what I understand to be the sort of factual background in the change. I know that Jeremy's here and I know Sean's here and they can correct me if I am wrong. In advance of the meeting, I had circulated a email that was written, I believe, to the select board explaining the change in the request on the stormwater project from original request of $250,000 down to $150,000. Again, my understanding is that this came up from discussions with the select board in terms of wanting to limit the expenditures for a different project, at which point I think it was probably Jeremy and Sean sort of went back and looked at sort of expenditures across multiple different projects and ways in which there might be some savings available. And with the stormwater project, this is a project that is being done at this stage by a consultant, which is, I believe, ACOM. And in consultation with ACOM, it was determined that the project could maintain compliance and be on the same sort of pathway towards execution and completion and the regular timeline. But this year could be done expending less time and money by the consultant, which is what precipitated the reduction down to $150,000. So at the end of the day, the town would remain in compliance and continuing on its trajectory of this multi-year project with a smaller expenditure. And the other project, by the way, was the roadway. I think it was questioned whether or not, the expenditure of $250,000 was necessary or appropriate perhaps, for next year. Just to make sure I disclosed what the other project was, that a member of the select board was concerned about the expenditures. So anything there, incorrect, Jeremy or Sean, on the background of that?
I covered it pretty well there, Peter. Yeah, thank you. So, we've talked about how this is the annual request to maintain compliance with the town's stormwater permit that's issued through the US EPA. And most specifically, this particular request will help fund the design portion and some construction of what's required of us through our phosphorus management plan to help treat some of our stormwater runoff to remove phosphorus. And fortunately, we met with AECom after the select board meeting you mentioned, and to meet and check in on them on upcoming work, and they gave us some updates on some of the proposed design that we could do, some updates to the approach that the US EPA was taking as well, which together helped sort of reduce the footprint of the design and the construction that we'll need to do for some of this treatment. So hence the reduction in the cost of the capital project.
And Jeremy, if I understand correctly, the consultant thinks there may be less cost overall in the execution phase as well, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, there's some new technologies that have been approved for use that will require less work overall.
Which is great in sort of the long-term
hopefully-
capital,
Yep.
budget plan, where hopefully there won't be as much sort of spikes coming out of at least this particular project.
Correct. I
or
mean,
the
there's
spikes are gonna be
certainly
flatter.
more to come, but I think some of the changes that were relayed by our consultant will help mitigate the cost.
Do I hear any questions from members of the committee?
No,
Great. Do I hear any proposed motions or? Hearing none, I will take it upon myself to move to revote and open up the prior vote that we already made with respect to the stormwater project. Do I hear anybody seconding that motion?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think Nora said aye. Aye.
Mhm.
And, okay, so now that we are reopening the vote on the stormwater project, do I hear any motions or any consideration that we should take?
About a different project or?
The stormwater. So
Oh,
I
okay.
am going to move that we vote to recommend the approval of a reduced amount instead of the $250,000 that we prior voted, that we vote or recommends the appropriation raising of $150,000 for a
I
capital budget project, the stormwater.
second that. Corey, do you have
All-
that? Thank you for writing this all down, Corey.
Okay, that's fine. I am going to fold your prior motion and this motion into one, if that's acceptable, Peter. We've usually done a recommendation and an amount in a single motion.
Oh, I guess I was, so what we had previously voted upon was to re-vote. And so
I
So like-
misunderstood your motion.
I guess I was being very procedural and basically making sure we're gonna re-vote something. So we voted to reconsider. And now we're voting on the substance. So my motion was seconded by Nora, which prompts me to say, all in favor of the $150,000, recommending $150,000 appropriation for the stormwater project. All in favor?
Aye,
Aye. All right, 3-0.
I got it.
The other item on the agenda was the historical items display. It has come to my attention that there was a request reduction of this project from the $150,000 that was requested when the sponsor, I think this is technically under the select board. When the sponsor had made the request at the capital budget committee meeting, I believe this was the February 15th meeting. That reduction or the subsequent request is to advisory and others was $100,000. And so I wanted to put that on the discussion. I know that we have perhaps the person most knowledgeable is Sean, who's here. And does anyone have any questions of Sean as to the historical items display project request? All right.
So Sean, why did it go from, was it 150 to 100? I'm not understanding if you can just explain for the record, like, why is the number lower, which is great? And then do you still anticipate, like, what do you anticipate for the final cost, I guess? Where that's gonna take us?
I anticipate on the final cost. I'm gonna anticipate on what the best information we have is very knowledgeable people in the field that can advise us on what the design's going to cost, and that's what somewhat changed. It's kind of a moving target as we were asking different people. So we're confident that the hundreds definitely certainly enough for the design. Like I had stated before, I felt like it was enough for the design and the construction admin throughout the construction phase. It very well still may be, but again, the design has to go out to bid, so we can't really pin a target on exactly that. You can pin a target on a full project and say you need to stay under that or it's not going to get built. But
I guess my question is, we had that one plan that I think was, what was like $14,000 for that one plan. That was, the proposal was 922. And so that was already one plan. And then then at that meeting in February where we voted in favor of 150, that we're reconsidering now for 100, which is great, that is lower, but then I've heard through other meetings that plan is still going to be used.
it's not the schematic, because you're using different terms. First of all, there was no proposal. That was an estimator sitting at his desk, just making assumptions and estimating.
But with that plan, there is a
Well, but that's not a plan. That's a schematic. That's not a full set. That's like a drawing. That's not a full set of specs. This full set of specs is probably going to be 150 pages deep. That's not what we handed that estimator. We handed him a 2-page drawing that kind of looks like something, has a square footage number, and they basically just use square foot numbers. They use, certain items that they know what they cost, based on assumptions. So I've never given you a proposal. I've never given you anything that was a hard number. I was asked to get an estimate. That's not the estimate I wanted to use, but that's what I got. So that's why the choice was made to drop back, get the full design, and put it back out. This isn't how I would have done this, but
how would you have done
I wouldn't have done the library the way it was done either.
And Nora, as I recall, the motion that we made, the prior motion that was made about this project is, as Sean just said, all we had was kind of a concept sketch. And that what we said in the motion was that we were looking for a final design and enough drawings, architectural drawings, that we could send it out for bid. And that's to pay for that work to get up to the point where we can send something out for bid.
All right, and I something later in advisory that on that February meeting that we had, that just forget those drawings, forget that, we're going to start new again. And then I heard somewhere in the meetings that, well, we're actually going to use those drawings. Like, we are going to have something very similar to that's what's going to be used. So I'm just can you help me understand a little bit more, Sean? I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm really not. I'm just trying to really understand. That's all.
Those drawings will be handed to the architect. Those drawings are basically going to be used as part of the scope that Jeremy and myself are gonna have to develop to put the design out to bid,
Okay, thank you.
right? And then those drawings will be used as kind of the starting point of some very, very detailed bid specs. Because
Without
this is,
$1,000 sink, hopefully, yes.
what's that?
Without that sink that was like, what, 40 grand or something?
Uh,
All right. Okay. And I just wanted to get clarification since some things have, I've been in all other meetings and just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Michael, did you have any questions? Sean, you just said something which raised a question in my mind. You said you thought that the prior amount, or at least your recommended appropriation of $150,000 would have included or would have been sufficient to also cover construction admin throughout the project. And that's the first time I've heard something like that. Can you describe what construction admin is?
Well, that's basically, so there's the phase leading up to, the design phase leading up to putting something out to bid. And then you basically shift once it's out, once it's awarded and you have a contractor, subcontractors, everything else, you shift to construction admin, which is where it's basically the oversight portion of it. So basically second phase and all the way through closeout. So an architect, the designers, the engineers, they're all doing, they're doing submittal reviews and everything else. So it's contemplated that we'll cover that as well. But what you would typically do is you'd put out to bid, and what we'll most likely do, Jeremy can correct me, we'll put out to bid the specs that we want, which is what we said, we'll get it, it'll go out to bid. The full set of bid specs, full set of bid documents, put it out to bid and come back, whether we're coming back to the town for money for construction or there's other grant monies or whatever else. Some of the grants that they may be able to go after, we probably need it either out to bid or we at least need those construction documents done.
Right, if you're talking about the bid schematic package, right?
Right.
Is the $100,000 contemplating this construction admin cost?
Yeah, I believe so. Again, we can't pin that final number until we have a final budget.
And do you have a sense on what would be enough for the bid package versus the construction admin?
Not off the top of my head. Again, we don't have hard numbers until we put it out to bid. The best information we have is we're gonna cover that.
Well, I guess my question is, I was under the impression that you only pay for the construction admin if you're actually constructing something, right? And at this point in time, we don't know if we're constructing anything.
You're contemplating we'll spend $100,000 on design and then not construct it?
If the town doesn't want to expend the money, it won't expend the money.
Well, then it won't expend the money either way. If it's if there's an extra 20,000, if there's an extra 7,000, it won't be spent on construction admin.
Right, but I think
if there is no construction admin.
I think what is being, at least what happened in our last meeting, and I don't know if it was different with advisory or any of the other meetings, but is it clear and I'm looking around at my advisory colleagues who are on our committee, or Dan can pipe in, is this notion that this construction admin costs is built into this widely understood, at least on advisory?
It is not completely understood by me. Dan and Mike, feel free to pipe in.
All differing opinions on
Hold on,
this.
just stop. Let's just rescind the whole thing. The design's gonna cost 100,000. Every time I try to make you comfortable with a number, you find something that I say and run with it. If there's extra money left I'm trying to make you understand. We don't know what the design's gonna cost. It hasn't gone out to bid. If it cost $80,000 and there's 20,000 left, the town can then choose if a year from now we're going to construction, then potentially that 20,000 can be carried forward as a construction admin to start the process of the construction. If you're not comfortable with that, then don't harp on it. We don't know what it's going to cost. We went from 150 and we rolled it back to 100. Leave it at that. They had said before that I think that the 150 is enough to cover the design and the construction admin.
Mm.
I think that. I'm confident that it probably will.
Well,
It doesn't
Well,
change the ask. You're splitting hairs.
I guess
We
I'm,
voted- Advisory voted, what was the vote, Dan, on this? I mean,
I think it was 7-2.
Mhm.
Can I jump in for a second?
yes, please
Thanks.
enlighten us.
Thanks, Peter. I can't speak for everyone else on advisory. I can tell you, as I said, it was a 7-2 vote. I can tell you how I understood it, which is there is a little bit of ambiguity here because the exact amount that the design is going to cost hasn't been established because there hasn't been a contract signed yet with the person who's going to do the design. So Sean, as I understand it, is suggesting that's going to be something probably less than 100,000, but approaching 100,000. So there's a little bit of ambiguity in exactly what that number is going to be, but 100,000 would be sufficient. If the design costs, say, 85,000 rather than 100,000, then that 15,000 would either, if the town decides not to proceed with the project, there's no grant funding, there's no private philanthropy, and the town decides not to do this project, then that 15,000 would end up ultimately coming back to the town as unspent funds. And if the town did go ahead with the project, then that 15,000 could just be applied towards the project management, during or construction management during that phase. So there is a little bit of ambiguity here. I got comfortable with that ambiguity, understanding that 100,000 was going to cover what needed to be done. Whether it's 85,000, 93,000, I have no idea. My understanding is that Sean also doesn't know exactly what that number is, can't know what that number is. So I got comfortable with that bit of ambiguity. But you are right, Peter. There is a bit of ambiguity here. There isn't a specific contract that has been signed or an RFP or a bid of design work is going to be $83,000. Do you want to do that or not? It is a little looser than that. And for me, I can't speak for anyone else on advisory. For me, I got comfortable with that, thinking that 100,000 was a reasonable amount to cover that, with maybe some money coming back or maybe some money rolling on if the project continues.
And Jeremy, I'll call on you next. I just want to make one brief comment. I guess, speaking personally, the dollar amount and the ambiguity, we understand it's an estimate, and hopefully it's the well thorough researched best estimate based upon everything available at the time. The purpose is the key for me, and making sure that is defined and that money is not going to be used for a purpose other than what it is voted upon by the town. And so if it is for the design and spec, I don't think the money can be rolled into something else unless there's a reappropriation of the money, or if it fits under the exception of like issues. But it isn't just you can just use the money for whatever comes next. It's for a specific purpose.
So Peter, what would you propose? That we approve 93,000?
No, the appropriation would be, from what I understand, the best understanding of how much it would cost to do the spec package is now $100,000. And if it's the spec package and something else, then I think it is those costs. If it can't be, turns out it's $70,000, $80,000, and the money is then used for a different purpose. The balance, sorry. is used for a different purpose. Purpose matters in terms of how the town votes, I believe. That's my point. Not necessarily how much it ultimately is. We're being told that this is the most accurate, best estimate that can be done at this time. And I trust that that's true, but the purpose is important. I'm just trying to ferret out exactly what the purpose here. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, I mean, the purpose is funding for the design and bidding of the project. The $100,000, my understanding, was arrived at by some discussions with residents and volunteers that are architects themselves. So it's the best estimate we can get from those in the know that do this for a living. We don't have a contract with an architect because we actually do have to do, by procurement law, we have to do a request for proposals process, which we have to select an architect based on their qualifications and their experience, and then we can negotiate a contract with them. So we do need some latitude to negotiate that contract, because we can't, in the RFP, we can give them what we anticipate to pay, but in the end, we do have to negotiate a contract with them. We will certainly negotiate a contract that is the most the best for the town of Sherborn, least expensive, best quality, and suits the purpose. So, you know, right now we are comfortable that 100,000 would meet the purpose of hiring an architect to do the design and the bidding of this project. If there were additional funds, then, you know, we can address that later with reappropriation or whatever's applicable.
And
Thank you.
I would just add on to that there have been capital items approved in the past where not all the money was spent. And what happens is then town meeting has to vote to reappropriate that. My guess would be, if the project were continuing, that the town would vote to apply those funds to the rest of the project. But that doesn't necessarily have to happen. The town could reappropriate the funds either to some other project or, you know, potentially to just, you know, take them back.
All right.
Oh, can we finesse this by saying that we recommend the appropriation of up to $100,000? And then whatever the negotiated amount turns out to be, if it's 93,000, then that's what gets spent and there will not be overage floating around?
That's a great question. I don't know if Deb is someone who might be able to shed some light on that. I am admittedly not.
I think you
not
have
as-
to have, for the purpose of a capital appropriation at town meeting, you have to have a dollar specific, but certainly it's our intent only to use what's needed. But I believe you need a specific dollar amount. And it is basically an up to, you know, we can't spend $100,001. We have to stay $100,000 or less. So I think we have to have a definite number.
Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Mike, I know you want to say something, so
No, I've
feel
already,
free.
I'm not, I've expressed my views and opinions on this before, so I'm all good.
I'll make the easy motion. I move that we revote this question.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And for the record, I believe that was an aye vote for Nora. I didn't hear you. I just saw your hand go up.
Corey and I are saying it at the same time. Thank you.
Sorry. Any other motions?
Yeah, I'll do the second one. I move that we recommend the appropriation of $100,000 for architectural plans sufficient for requests to bid.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. What other work do people want to do today? I think we might have one other item on the agenda.
How about the car?
Do I hear any,
Sean
what's that?
was saying thank you to Sean as he was signing
Oh.
out.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Do I hear anybody who wants to either have discussion on this, or should we move right towards voting? Actually, we should probably have some sort of discussion just for the record, right? So after the Capital Budget Committee voted on February 15th at our meeting to recommend the appropriation of $54,000 for the police vehicle, it has come to our attention that there has been a adjustment to the request, and it is now $55,200 for the four-door sedan police vehicle internal combustion engine. So there, our recommendation was under what the ultimate cost has been. And would anyone like to revote this matter? If so, I would need a motion.
I move to revote this matter.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay, now we are going to revote. Do I hear any motion?
I move that we recommend appropriation of $55,250 for the purchase of the police vehicle.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it 3-0. Okay, so those are the three items. I think that there was some discrepancy between when we voted and then ultimately when advisory voted. Do people have any other business they'd like to attend to, or should we just start thinking about our next meeting?
I think Dan has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan.
Thanks, Peter. Would you like me, so I'm gonna, probably in about an hour, circulate a new draft of the report. Would you like me to insert these numbers into that draft?
That would be very helpful.
Okay, so I
Thank
will
you.
put these in and they'll be in the version that gets distributed around probably in about an hour.
Thank you very much.
Great,
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you,
perfect.
Dan. And Dan,
Yeah,
when you say distributed, I'm not sure if I've gotten a full draft of the report in any sort of distro list. Could you include all members of the Capital Budget Committee on that latest circulation?
so I would typically include you and then Nora and Mike as advisory members, but I'm happy to send it to anyone, who wants to see it. I mean, it's not a final draft, so I don't want it floating around so that people think this is a final draft, because something might still change tomorrow morning. But, I'm happy to send it to you and to Corey as well.
Okay.
And then all of you would have it and that'd be fine.
Okay. And look, I know I oftentimes get emails from you, but I'm not sure if you've been circulating the prior versions of the draft outside of advisory. So
I have. I think you've gotten an earlier version. I think Corey's gotten an earlier version.
I did.
yeah, I definitely know I got at least one version. I just didn't know if you've been sending out subsequent.
Yeah, I have, I think, sent out maybe 2 versions, and I've tried not to send out daily versions because I'm assuming that's more advisory report than most people want to see. But I will send one out tonight as the penultimate version and the final chance for people to offer any comments or corrections.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I apologize. I know I had gotten it once. I just didn't know how many times.
No, all good. No need to apologize. All good.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody. I guess the only other issue is looking forward to our next meeting. Typically, I think we would want to meet in the sort of beginning of the summer and just making sure we have our letter request tuned up so that I can go out in September, or we could try to meet at some point in August and just make whatever changes. Last year was a little different because it was the town meeting sort of changed the nature of our requests and sort of our timetable. This year, it should be very similar to last year. The letter request would go out sort of right after Labor Day. And Jeremy, to the extent that you have any further input on how that should be done, we could have a meeting and we could do that in June, or we try to do it in August. I guess probably makes sense to try to meet once more before everyone departs for the summer, just to have all that sort of locked down. But I look around and I don't know what works best for everybody else's schedule. So what are people thinking?
I'm okay with June. I don't know when the public school year ends, but the 4th is the first Tuesday in June.
So I think it's mid-June at this point is when the public school is can be done. We can fine tune the actual date, perhaps over email as people's schedules become a little bit clearer. But I just want to sort of plant a flag that June is the next time, or there'll be some point later on.
Well, probably be a good idea to meet in June, just to get prepared.
All right. Laura, thoughts?
I'm fine. I'm,
Okay. Mike, does June generally work?
June works, yep.
Okay. All right, so why don't we aim for that June 4th, and we can tweak that as necessary. I frankly haven't looked at my calendar to see whether or not I think I'd be around, but not sure myself yet. I don't know if members of the town staff, if that would ever work for them either. So why don't we sort of pencil that in, and then we can set that more firmly once everyone has an opportunity to look at their calendars, et cetera. And that's sufficiently after town meeting, or it should be after town meeting. So if anything happens of interest at town meeting, then we can kind of react at our next meeting. Other than that, I think we should be pretty much done with fiscal year 25. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean, any other business that we're dropping the ball on? I'm happy to try to pick it back up if I've dropped anything. So,
Can
okay.
I make a
thing, oh, go ahead.
motion to adjourn?
I second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye. The ayes have it. 7:50 p.m. and we are meeting is closed.